Hello everyone, it's Dr. Paul Rose with another how-to guide for MSc students. In this presentation we're going to be looking at horizon scans, what the process is of doing a horizon scan and how do we get useful and important information from them. So first up, let's consider what we mean by the term horizon scan. We're basically looking to see what is out there on the horizon. So this is a foresight method for identifying signals of change early on. Foresight means to have an idea of what's coming, to see into the future as best possible, and to plan for events that might be coming along. And horizon scanning is a systematic and proactive approach that empowers organisations, industry, particular bodies that are working in a particular area to anticipate and respond to change, trends and future patterns in the work or activities that they are involved in. And not only to identify and anticipate trends, but to also help shape them. You might have heard a lot about horizon scanning with the responses that we are trying to give as a global community to climatic change. Understanding the potential impacts of climatic change is in itself a horizon scan that each and every one of us are involved with trying to rectify. So horizon scanning itself not only enables anticipation of what's coming, but it can also help industry, organisations identify opportunities for growth and development. And they can identify and mitigate any potential challenges before these challenges become overwhelming. That's why so much impact is currently put into getting people to understand the potential impacts of climate change, whilst we're still in that phase of being able to solve what might be occurring. Horizon scans also help to kickstart collaboration and relationships, particularly between academia and industry. They drive innovation and technological development. They enable products or tools to be defined, manufactured and implemented that can help meet these challenges. And they can respond to consumer or customer needs to change viewpoints, human behaviour and how we think, feel or engage our actions in response to the results of such horizon scanning. So now we've defined what a horizon scan is, how do we start one? How do we start this process of trying to predict the future? There is a three-pronged approach to starting your horizon scan. And these three prongs are firstly to define your topic of investigation, to then broaden your view, to think about who or what might be affected or impacted, and then to actually do the scanning, to look across a wide range of resources to gather and then evaluate information that will allow you to come up with action points that put your academic research scanning into practical application. So definitions of topics, broadening of viewpoints, and then the scanning itself are our three-pronged approach for doing a horizon scan. Let's go through each of these prongs in turn. So first up, how to define your topic. You need to think about what is current and contemporary, what is out there at the moment, topics of investigation, research questions, things that organisations are focusing on that give us an idea of what is coming in the future that we might need to deal with. What challenge do we need to solve? Where are people investing their attention, investing money, logistics, resources in trying to work out? You can't do horizon scans on the past. You have to look to the future. So being current and contemporary is really, really important. So think about the likelihood of a particular area of industry, practical application or business that will become challenging or need attention in the future? And how will we respond as a society to that challenge in a way that gives us opportunities and that we can deal with any potential problems before they become overwhelming? After you have defined your topic, so you know what particular subject you are going to focus on for your horizon scan, that topic definition will really allow you to select pertinent literature for you to look across at where that topic, where that theme might be going. It's important that you broaden your view to think about all of the different sectors of society, as well as the environment and industry that could be impacted by the challenge, problem or question that your horizon scan is based on. So the second prong is broadening your view. And in this part of the horizon scan method, you complete what we call a PESTLE analysis. And PESTLE simply means political, economic, social, technological, legal and environmental. These particular categories that you delve into to think about impacts, influence and effects on the topic you have chosen. So political influences could come from trade and taxation, could come from trends in political thinking, the whim of the government of the day, and any regulation, policy or outputs from ministers that will influence how the public or how business or how industry operate, and therefore the impact that might have on your topic of choice. Next up, we think about economics. This could be inflation, it could be recession, it could be growth in industrial output, it could be prosperity that gives people more money to spend. We can never get away from economic impacts on the work that we do as scientists. So it's important that we think about economics and particularly beneficial aspects of our scientific outputs on the economy when it comes to doing a horizon scan. Some of the challenges we are trying to meet might be really useful for economic outputs, but other challenges might mean we have to change how we do business or how financial organisations work. So it's important to consider politics and economics in any horizon scan. Then we think about social impacts, the demographic characteristics of people, gender balance, age balance. What do people think and feel? What are current trends in views and opinions by different generations? These will all have impacts on how we meet a challenge, how we present information, and on the type of evidence or information that we can gather from expert opinion. We then look at technology, technological innovation and advancement, as well as scientific discovery, are all really important key parts of our arsenal to help us meet future challenges. Particularly if we're thinking about climatic change, technological developments that have come from horizon scans are really helpful for us to work out what we need to do moving forwards. Legal aspects of a horizon scan, so legal influence or legal impacts, are going hand in hand with politics and economics. So again, we've got policy and guidelines, we've got government outputs in the form of legislation, which can lead to regulation of industry or regulation of processes. We know there is environmental regulation. We know there are laws around what we can and cannot do with the environment that is really important when we're thinking about the outputs from a horizon scan. And likewise, when we do science, we are governed and constrained by legal responsibilities. And last but by no means least, we've got environmental impacts. These could be really big, like climatic change, or they could be much smaller, such as environmental regulation and management of particular habitats or processes, waste management, for example. We also need to think about sustainability and how we are sustainable in our actions, and that really links back to social and economic impacts. And we should also be aware of consumer awareness, how consumer trends change based on an understanding of environmental pressures. Again, this can go back to social, political, and societal views on what is right or wrong. What challenges should we meet? What do we have a moral or ethical responsibility to try and fix, look into, or make better? So you've defined your topic, you've looked across your pestle analysis at the particular influences or impacts that there might be on that topic. You're now in the best position to do your scanning. So from the definition of your topic, you should be able to see this is what I am going to focus on. For example, if you were thinking about climate change, you might want to focus on a particular aspect of climate change to narrow down your horizon scan into something that you could create action points from. Otherwise, that's a really huge topic to be trying to solve with one horizon scan. So by doing the scanning, you choose your resources, you then read and digest them. You must evaluate and synthesize output and meaning from them. So your sources can be your standard academic outputs of the peer-reviewed literature, books, journal articles, things that academic institutions produce. Also think about industry outputs, so industry reports or documents or things that are produced by the people working in that field. For those working with zoo animals, for example, husbandry care sheets or best practice guidelines are examples of industry outputs. They are written for and by those working in that sector. We then think about the media, so the traditional media of television, radio, and newspapers, but also online media, social media, which also is a really important source of news and information. Just remember to fact check, avoid fake news, and think about the quality of the information presented. Look at expert viewpoints and opinions. Have scientists been interviewed? Have scientists given their thoughts or their stance on a particular topic? Is it credible? Is that person a real expert in their field? Look at their academic, technological, or industry relevance and expertise. And finally, think about government, because government regulates our lives. So what policy or legislation is written and enacted by central government that impacts on how we work, on what we do, and the things that we are allowed or not allowed to perform in terms of the topic or area that you are investigating. So academic and industry outputs, information from the media, expert viewpoints, and the outputs from central government. You've done your scanning, you've looked across all of your important sources, and based on the type of horizon scan that you're performing, i.e. how you're going to present it, I recommend a table or a list of all of the sources that you have looked at. Maybe group them by the type of source. Maybe have all of your peer-reviewed papers, all of your academic books, all of your news or media outputs, all of your expert opinions that you've gathered. So you have your body of evidence that you can show to others or the readership of your horizon scan where this information has come from. And once you have scanned, try to then prioritize your outputs. Group them based on similarity, your challenges, your opportunities, your potential threats, potential weaknesses, potential successes. What do you think is most important or most impactful from the sources you have scanned? And then what's the time frame for consideration? How long would it take you to develop mitigating circumstances, to develop ways of dealing or solving that horizon scan? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? What do we focus on now in the short term? What do we focus in the mid-term? And what's our long-term goals? If you're a conservation biologist, you will know all about the time frame for doing work that's impactful, because you will be familiar with the IUCN Red List. That in itself is a horizon scan. You're looking across at the threats to species. You're working out what's an immediate threat, what's a mid-term threat, and what's a long-term threat. So for those of you in the conservation world, you already look at horizon scans because you know what the IUCN Red List is trying to do. For those of you not familiar with that, simply Google IUCN Red List, choose a species of animal, and look at the report that comes up. And you will see all of the information that's gathered to identify the threats to that particular species. So the result, the main output from your scan, will be the identification and evaluation of trends, themes and issues that you then need to work out action points from. Because a horizon scan is not just a report or an essay, it's a way of identifying this is what we need to do to capitalise on this and to solve that. How do we maximise benefit and how do we reduce threats? So this means the last part of your horizon scan is a call to action. What should be done and in what time frame? What steps should be taken to ensure people are aware of the need for action? And how do we create research that is then going to be applied? How do we formulate action steps to consider the opportunities as well as the challenges that I've identified to show the benefits of doing research in the future? Research is only as good as the audience it reaches, and your research needs to reach those people that can do something about the challenges that we face. So how do we show them, how do we explain to them what you have found, what you have identified, why that's meaningful and important to change policy, to change practice, to be embedded into how we do things to make sure that we benefit from the outputs of this horizon scan. So what should be done, what action should be taken, and what are the next steps to turn your research into actual activity that's on the ground and working in the subject area that you've identified. So let's bring all of this together with a worked example to show you what all these steps look like in practice and how do we actually do a horizon scan. So here is my case that I'm going to investigate. Public attitudes to large mammals in zoos. Are they positive or negative? What does the general public feel about gorillas, lions and tigers and bears, oh my, and how do we keep them in captivity? So first up, we're going to define our topic, then we're going to broaden our viewpoints, and then we're going to actually do some scanning. So when we define our topic, this is a really big issue because there are multiple species of large mammal that we house in zoos in many different parts of the world. So to define that down, to make it more concise, we're going to think about, are some species causing more controversy when they are housed in the zoo? What species are controversial and why? So we'll then look at our viewpoints and we'll think about social influences. So this could be perceptions of animal welfare by different demographic. Do some people care more about the welfare of animals than others? Then we're going to think about technological advances. So can we validate welfare measures for these species in captivity? Can we validate them better for some species compared to others? And therefore, do we know how well some species cope? But for other species, that might be a real grey area. We then need to think about economics. So, do people have money to spend going to visitor attractions based on the current economic climate? And are they more likely to spend money going to the zoo if there are particular species present? So what's the economic driver that brings people to the zoo or makes them stay away from going to the zoo. Let's think about the environment. Can we be sustainable with the populations that we keep? Do we have massive infrastructure spends on keeping some of these species? And is that infrastructure and environmental impact outweighed by the conservation relevance? And finally, let's think about political and legal issues. What legislation is in place that permits or forbids the keeping of particular species? And what is the whim of government? Do governments support keeping some of these species in zoos, or are they also political hot potatoes, which is why the public might be aware of this change in what is acceptable to actually manage in the zoo? So we've done our pestle analysis, and we're now going to create a horizon scan of the literature. So we could look at internal reports from zoos themselves. How is the zoo community addressing the attitudes of their visitors? What does the academic literature say? Are there any qualitative or quantitative outputs that have looked at animal behaviour or have scanned and surveyed visitor opinions on what they think about the animals they see in the zoo? Who has investigated animal welfare states to give us some credible evidence of how animals respond to the zoo? What about the media? The media can whip up a real firestorm around some of these controversial topics. So what messages are commonly portrayed to the general public in various media outlets? What about expert opinion? Have we got interviews from scientists, animal welfare scientists, conservation biologists, animal rights advocates? Do we get a balance across different expert opinion on what we think about whether or not we should keep some of these species in the zoo? And then finally, we've looked at government. So policy briefings, primary legislation, select committee outputs, government expert panels that sit. What is the government being advised on? Who is advising government? And what is the output that is coming from that advice? Because ultimately, if zoos follow a licensing structure, they will then have to manage their collection plan around what they are told from central government. And how are zoos themselves advocating for their own causes to central government? So we've got this whole big body of literature that we can scan to think about the viewpoints of each of our boxes and the potential influences they have on our horizon scan. So from this worked example, we should be able to identify opportunities and challenges from our scan across the literature. Our opportunities could be to rationalise and further add value to collection plans by changing how animals are displayed based on current welfare science outputs. We could better integrate conservation action into how we keep animals in the zoo to really crystallise that conservation message to our visitors. We could consider future-proofing enclosures, giving more room, giving more enrichment, increasing social groups, increasing indoor areas to manage these species in a way that presents them in a more appropriate manner to zoo visitors. We could develop new methods of telling stories. We could integrate AI, for example, or multimedia displays, holograms, moving animatronics alongside of living animals. And we could strengthen advocacy and political impact. We could use our animals better. We could identify gaps in the knowledge of our lawmakers, or how we could better influence government by inviting them to the zoo and showing them our lions and tigers and bears close up and personal. Not too close up because we wouldn't want them to get eaten. And we could also identify ways of enhancement of the visitor experience. Visitor dwell time, how long they spend at an enclosure. How do we tell our story better to really encourage that connection with nature? When people go to the zoo, they have the added value of actually seeing and experiencing living animals. But our challenges could be that it's simply not right anymore to keep these species. So perhaps we have to phase them out, replace with alternatives, and use those alternatives to tell their story more effectively. How do we balance the conservation need of keeping some of these rare species against public opinion? The zoo is a stronghold. It's a safe space for these animals that are threatened with extinction in the wild. And the wild doesn't always exist for these species. So we've got to convey that message. We can't just release all of the tigers because there's nowhere to release them. But if the public doesn't agree with them being kept, the zoo's revenue will go down and the zoo's standing in society will be diminished. So we must tell our stories better. We've got to engage with legislators to explain why the zoo is there and why we house these species. Ultimately, if we don't engage, the zoo's message will be diluted and the zoo's role will be diminished, and there'll be reduced funding potential. Zoos rely on gate entry, ticket prices to generate funding for conservation, education, research and advocacy. But if we don't advocate, we don't get funding, we can't meet all of our aims. So we've got to meet these challenges by better engaging with our audiences and encouraging our audiences to really connect with nature if we want to manage these controversial species in the future, and really importantly, remove the controversy so they're seen as real conservation value when they're managed in the zoo. So I hope this worked example has shown you the whole process of identifying the topic, identifying broad areas of viewpoints, of scanning across the literature and selecting particular types of literature that would be important. And then crucially, from this horizon scan, we have got action points. These are the things we need to do to ensure our research is translated into direct action that will benefit those in science, in industry, or in the operational system that we are working in. To recap and conclude, horizon scans are proactive and they rely on forethought. They're a method for looking into the future, and we identify opportunities and challenges from them. We define our topic, we do our pestle analysis to get a broad swathe of views and opinions. We then scan the literature, we evaluate and synthesize new meaning from the literature, and then we create action points that allows us to mitigate threats and to maximize opportunities. So good luck with your horizon scanning. It's an insightful, useful and really thoughtful process to go through, and I hope this short how-to guide has been really useful in allowing you to see the key points that you have to cover to do a horizon scan successfully. Thank you very much.